Hey everyone. I'm wondering if you can hear me. Can you let me know in the chat? Otherwise, I'll put on the microphone. I prefer not to if I don't have to. Okay, can anyone hear me? Let me know in the chat, please. Great. All right, awesome. Got loud and clear. Thank you so much for being here. It looks like we've got 9 folks in here already. Thank you. And 7 of you have given me a thumbs up. I appreciate that. It kind of pushes the stream out to other people. So I'm going to just give it about another minute or two, let people flow in here. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. I do not like wireless devices, and one of the trade-offs of only bringing a backpack to Southeast Asia was that I had to get a small wireless microphone, which, I'm not into Bluetooth, none of that stuff. No extra EMFs, so if I don't have to use it, I don't want to. Great. Thank you, Dharmiga. All right, we've got 11 people here. Thank you for giving it a thumbs up, everyone. We're just going to wait one more minute and get going, and I'll be sharing with you some of the things that have been on my mind lately, and we can just have a free-flowing conversation, different ideas. Hey, Katie, welcome. I caught most of you in the chat beforehand, but Katie, welcome. Got both coasts and in between here. That's pretty awesome. APD, where are you from? If you don't mind sharing, you can just give a time zone if that's more comfortable for you. Got 14 here. Okay, just 1 or 2 more minutes before we get started. Thank you for giving it a thumbs up. It pushes the live stream out to other people. All right. Well, I just wanted to say before we get started that this is the second morning. Oh, thank you, Katie. Oh, you're from the Netherlands. Oh my gosh, you're staying up late, APD. Thank you so much for being here. Oh my gosh. If you get tired, there will always be the replay. So I don't know, before I get into the topic of the live stream, I don't know if any of you know this, but Vietnam, especially central Vietnam, where I am, has been hit by one typhoon after another. Until yesterday morning, it had been 14 days straight of torrential rain, and it was rather miserable. And I am in an area, fortunately, that was not affected, but other folks were not as fortunate. The ancient cities of Hoi An and Hue. Hoi An is only 25 minutes south of here, and Hue were devastatingly flooded. So I've been cooped up indoors way more than I like. I've literally had to put on a rain poncho to go on beach walks because I just can't stay indoors. It's just not my thing. And I was hoping to be able to live stream with doors and windows open. I'm on the top floor of this building, but unfortunately, they got started on construction work. So we are just going to roll with it, even though, again, I'm not a big air conditioning person. So there are 23 people in here. Thank you for the thumbs up. It does push the live stream out to other people. So if you could hit that, that would be awesome. And I just want to get started. So one of the things about being cooped up indoors during these torrential downpours for nearly 2 weeks straight, or also just walking in the rain, has got me thinking about the trajectory of my life and sort of the wide range of experiences I've had, particularly in terms of living situations. Now, this whole conversation doesn't have to be about different ways of building a home for oneself. But just to share a little bit, I've had everything from apartment dwelling in cities. For example, I'm in Da Nang, Vietnam. I've lived in New York, London, Seoul, Athens. I split time between London and Paris one year. Those are, I've lived in Honolulu. I've spent a lot of time in California, and not necessarily in cities like Los Angeles or San Francisco, but outside. And I've also lived on a homestead in rural America. I've lived in the mountains in a tiny mountain town. I've lived in the backwoods, way out in the middle of nowhere where you couldn't find you wouldn't know where to look ever. I mean, it's barely even visible if someone were to fly overhead. And I lived in an antique log cabin without electricity. I've also lived in a treehouse in a tropical climate for several months, and that was amazing too. So I wanted to get into some of this and share my experiences in those places and then just see where the conversation goes. I'm happy to talk about work, life, whatever. This is really just a chance for us to talk and to share ideas and ask each other questions. So the first one I wanted to talk about was actually a job I had, and it was kind of amazing. And the management was all over the map, I should say. It was kind of a mess. And if it weren't, I probably would have returned. I also did end up falling and getting injured, but it was a job in the mountains. And it was, and I've referenced it briefly here and there, but it was a job working for ultra high net worth individuals at a private camp and camp club. They have so many different words for these things. Um, and it was in the mountains. You had to get to it by logging roads. So, and those are treacherous. If anyone's ever driven on logging roads, you will know they are not fun. And you have to drive quite a ways on logging roads, and there are no signs either. So when you have to take multiple turns, if you don't know where you're going, it is very easy to get lost. That's how remote and secretive these kind of places are. And of course, I'm not going to disclose anything that would betray the privacy of this place, but I just wanted to talk about the lifestyle. So this place also had a similar setup to the it was I wouldn't say it was an intentional community when I lived in the treehouse. Let's just say it was a community, not so intentional. But the thing that these two places had in common was that they had separate buildings for everything. Now, at this job, I I was the housekeeping manager, and I was the only housekeeper. Okay, I ran the whole show. There was one gal who pitched in part time here and there, but she was mostly a server. And the reason I loved that job, one, was the solitude and just being alone. And cleaning for me is very meditative. I enjoy it, especially when it's simple cleaning. And because this place was set up in a way that every building was separate. So we had one building for the dining room, and the staff had their own dining hall in the back side of the building as the members of this club. And there was a housekeeping building. Now, the only two buildings that had electricity were the dining hall and the housekeeping building, and well, also the manager's cabin. But every other cabin where the members stayed, and again, these are ultra high net worth individuals who come to this place to switch off, to totally disconnect from the world. And you can't really get cell service out there. So, yeah, bliss be with you. Yes, logging roads are not fun. Um, this place literally had no cell service, and they had some Wi-Fi, but it was really bad, which is okay by me. And all of the cabins were antique log cabins that were, it was all wood that was hand hewn. It was not done by machines, and they had been maintained over the decades, and they're beautiful. I had so much joy cleaning them. And when you live in a place this remote and all these buildings don't have electricity, my life as a housekeeper was reduced to the most basic and wonderful elements of it. I used a lot of vinegar and water. I didn't use a lot of nasty chemicals, because also I had to consider the septics and everything like that. Uh, I had to use toilet cleaner per the club, but instead of making my own. But I didn't have to vacuum. There was no noise involved. I swept. I beat rugs with a broom or a stick, just real basic things. And it was beautiful to live a life that was totally free of electricity in that sense. The only time I was exposed to lights, and I never really worked at night in the housekeeping building ever to do laundry. The only time I was exposed to electric lights was during my time in the dining halls, not for lunch, but just breakfast and dinner. And then the antique log cabin that I stayed in, and I had a beautiful old antique desk there. It was gorgeous. Maybe one day I'll share some photos in my community posts. But it was really lovely. It was so basic, so simple, but it was all you needed, and there was just this calm about it. The only lights we had in that were uh, just propane lights that were mounted on the walls, and you just and light them, and that's it. The water we did have hot water. It was gravity fed, and that was also propane heated. Now, I have to say, my experience living at that place was that my nervous system totally calmed down. And after that job, it was a seasonal job. And after that job, I came back to the area I had been living in and moved back there. And every single person said to me, "My God, you look amazing." Now, you have to consider, they said, "You look so vibrant and so healthy." And I think part of that was the fact that I was not living nonstop in electrically wired buildings. And that really got me thinking, because also there was I think his name is Dr. Samuel Milham. I can't remember his exact name. He's not a great writer, but I have his book. It's in my book video, and it's called Dirty Electricity. And while he's not a great writer, that book is loaded with references to research and about how, and his research as well, and how cancer rates have skyrocketed living with electricity. So that really got me thinking. And I wondered if part of that had to do with the fact that I wasn't online often, that I wasn't living with electricity, that my job required me to hike mountain trails to get to these cabins, to clean them. I mean, I was basically a Sherpa, just carrying around cleaning supplies on mountain trails. And it really, I was fit. I was not exposed to non-native EMFs. They're also called NN EMFs, which I'll talk about that in a health stream later. Dr. Jack Cruz, Dr. Alexis Cowan, so many doctors have been speaking of this, but Dr. Robert O. Becker was the leading medical doctor and scientist who blew the whistle on this. And he didn't intentionally blow the whistle. It was during an interview on 60 Minutes. That he just answered a question, and then it was the demise of his career because he said the inconvenient truth. So, but more on that in another stream. So that really got me thinking as to, okay, if I feel the best I've ever felt in my life, and this was only a few years ago, literally 3 years ago, I felt better than I'd ever felt in my entire life. So if I could feel that way in my 40s, better than I ever felt in my teens and 20s, for example, then that tells me something, that our lifestyle, it shows how deeply our lifestyle affects our bodies and aging. And so there was that lifestyle. And then that also paralleled basically to when I lived in a treehouse in a tropical setting. Now, I knew the person who owned the property, which is why I landed there in the first place. And I was taking a course not far away, but I did extend my stay at this not so intentional, um, not so intentional community, I should say. But it was very similar in the sense that there wasn't much electricity. We had these gorgeous outdoor showers that were all stone built and private. It was just like a waterfall shower. Bathrooms were separate and private. You had to walk everywhere to get to what you needed. You had to walk to one area to get to the washing machine. you had to walk to another area. We had 2 kitchens. There was a garden kitchen, and then there was another kitchen, one better for rainier weather than the other. And, we grew a lot of food. We also bought food, but it was just a very calming setting. If it's a not so intentional community, it's not always calm because that means that people don't always bring the same level of ethics and focus into the way that they are present in the community. And that, you know, I'm not a fan of dwelling amongst people who aren't into giving 100%. And that doesn't mean that you're giving 100% all the time, because, for example, when someone's sick, then the rest of us give 125% and vice versa. And it's a kind of a give and take. So I'm really a fan of intentional communities. You can find them all over the world. I'm actually going to put the link. I believe this is it. I've been on the website many times. I think it's ic.org, but I'll double check that. Hang tight. One second. I'm looking for it right now. Yep, that is it. It's the Foundation for Intentional Community, and there's a directory. You can find them all over the globe. You can search the directory by country, and then if you're looking in the U.S., you can go by state. It's really, really fascinating. We have some interesting comments in the chat, so I just want to mention them. Propane lights are very comforting. Yes, Riff Raff, I agree completely. Propane lights are very, very soothing. Reading by candlelight is great, but you need several candles to actually be able to see. But oil lamps and propane lamps, perfect. It's very easy to fall asleep in the evening. Let's put it that way. APD says, makes sense. What you see is what you get. And it's all about your experience in that moment, letting go of everything else. Glad that you did have so much fun. Yeah, it was an awesome experience. Okay. Tom M. Cork says something. I worked for a large electric utility. You can plot childhood cancer along a 230,000 volt transmission line. That's very interesting, Tom. And when I've been driving and I see these huge electric corridors and I see houses near them, I've always wondered about that, especially after reading Dr. Robert O. Becker's work and Dr. Samuel Milham's work. I've always wondered. It's really fascinating, and you've definitely confirmed that too. Usama asked, how many books do you usually read per year? You are very knowledgeable on a wide variety of topics. Yeah, thank you very much. I actually have no idea how many books I read per year. Since I started traveling, I've been reading a lot less. But that's also because I have a few books with me and not many. And it's not easy to find English books in like Vietnam unless you're in Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi. There is one English bookstore here, but I kind of have read mixed reviews. I might check it out, but yeah, I'm one of those people who reads one book and it kind of feeds me down a path, and I pursue that path because one book turns me onto another in a certain topic and a certain train of thought, and I just keep reading until I feel like I've pursued that channel long enough. Health has been one of the biggest topics for me. Also, I don't I think one of the most destructive things we can do is to constantly accept beliefs because they are common. So, yeah, I try to read things that expand my mind. I do read fiction, of course, it's just because it's really great to develop the imagination. I think that's one of the greatest gifts of being a human. And if you know how to use your imagination to your advantage, life can be really great. Um, yeah, so anyway, that ic.org, really interesting. And you're going to see, if you look on that and you're looking for an alternative, the reason why I think intentional communities are probably going to be the path of the future for those who don't love urban dwelling. And I mean big urban dwelling. I don't mean small cities. But for those who are really put off by urban dwelling, I think intentional communities are going to be the way forward because one, cost of living has gone through the roof for everyone around the world. Um, People are exhausted. You have to work harder and longer, or not necessarily harder, but it seems like people are working longer hours to just meet their basic needs. And then they have to go home and clean their house and cook meals and do the laundry. And it's just way too much. And I think because I've lived in communal settings where all of the chores are shared, both in that treehouse setting where I was, and then also at that job, I can confirm that life is so much easier because I never had to cook. So I knew that we had a wonderful chef who enjoyed making healthy, delicious food, and I just had to show up. But everyone also knew that they would always have clean sheets and clean towels because I was doing them. For example, so that was my thing. They always, like, the other staff always knew that they would have clean sheets and clean towels. They had to we had to sweep our own cabins, but no one had to do laundry. They only had to do their own laundry, and even then, if they were lazy, they would slide me some cash and say, "Would you mind doing my laundry?" And I'd say, "No problem." So there was that, and it was I think that division of labor has created a very, um, to some extent, detrimental way that we live because it disempowers people from developing a wide variety of skills, or I should say, it discourages people. And it gets us into this mindset that only the experts can do things. That, okay, only a carpenter can build a house. No, we used to all build our own houses and we used to help our neighbors build their houses. That's how it used to be. And there are lots of people going back to that. And so that's why I think intentional communities are great because one, it's shared responsibility. It definitely lightens the load. Communities can help raise and look after children. Maybe you and your spouse are cooking dinner one night for the small community, but you don't have to cook another meal all week because that responsibility is divided up amongst the team. And then maybe one day, one afternoon, you're looking after the kids, or another day you're in the garden, and it's just a pleasant way of living. And a lot of intentional communities have developed sort of cottage industries for themselves so that they can generate income to support the community so that people don't have to leave if they don't want to work, which is beautiful. And I think honestly that that is going to be a major way forward. There are tons of them all over the world, some way better than others, some way more developed, some less developed, big, small, some that are very high end and expensive, some that are not, everything in between. But I honestly believe that there's an opportunity for everyone there. And that's what living in both of those settings taught me. And that was the real inspiration for me wanting to start this live stream today. So I'm going to open this wide up to conversation and questions. Thank you for the thumbs up. I see 17 people have given it a thumbs up. If you don't mind doing that, that would push the live stream out to more people. Let's see. APD says, true. I'm so glad when I'm back in Thailand to see and feel the differences compared to Europe. It's just so much more affordable. Yes, it is. And I have to say that the Thai people, and I know in Europe there's a much better balance between all aspects of life than maybe in places like, say, China or Japan or the US. Um, but yeah, the Thais, Southeast Asians know how to relax for the most part. Singapore might be the exception. Let's see. Any questions, comments, anything that anyone would like to share? Yeah, I think part of this live stream was about me going from a very tiny town in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of nowhere in the United States, and going to a million it's I think it's 1.2 million people here in Da Nang, Vietnam. How is the water? Is it warm or do you get to swim often? Great question, Katie. The water is warm. It's a little cooler these days just because of the typhoons, but when I got here and I was swimming every day and it was sunny, and I don't swim during storms just because the water's not clean. I see people doing it. It's the water's not calm either, which is fine by me, but it's just not clean during storms. And I see people swimming. I'm like, oh, that's a great way to get a staph infection or some other thing. So I don't. Um, but it was about 84 degrees Fahrenheit when I, yeah, first got here. The water, I know, unbelievable. It was so warm. APD says Europe these days feels far too expensive in most aspects, and it seems like at least 50% of the Western population eventually sells everything they own to pursue a better life in Asia for this reason. Yeah, it's true. Also, it's like a mass exodus, I think, from a lot of Western countries. It's like there's a massive influx of people from other cultures coming into Western countries, and then because of we won't get into why and how, but we'll leave it at that. But as a result, a lot of Westerners are also, it's waking people up to what they want in life because there are more people in their country, things are getting more expensive, there's less housing. The system is doing what it was meant to do, which is to extract your time, your energy, and your money from you. And anyone who thinks otherwise, oh, they are so sweet. That's all I have to say. Um, I'm not a skeptical person, but I definitely am realistic in many ways. And that's yeah. But I think it's a blessing. A lot of people think of it as doom and gloom, but it is an absolute blessing because it is forcing so many of us Westerners or just people who have lived kind of lives with so much excess. It's forcing us to realize what we need and what we don't need and to wake up and figure out what our priorities are. I think everything here is an opportunity. It's just that a lot of people refuse to see the opportunity and they dwell on the part that they don't like instead of saying, what can I learn here and what can I do with this? And I think that's the real key to making things happen for yourself. And that's why I think, as you pointed out, APD, that a lot of people are relocating to Central and South America, to Southeast Asia. They're realizing that even though these countries may not always, some do, may not always have the kind of infrastructure that we are used to, they definitely value a lot of the important things. Family relationships are still strong. Quality of life is still important. The happiest people I ever saw was when I was in Costa Rica over 20 years ago. And I was staying in this small beach town. My friends and I was the only one who spoke Spanish in our group. And we were on a surf trip. And it was it was late at night and none of the hotels, and we'd been driving for hours, and a lot of the hotels just were closed. They didn't have anyone at their front desks. And one of the security guards actually took us down the street to a man he knew who had just built some bungalows. There was like a building on stilts, weren't really bungalows, and it had 4 rooms upstairs or 3 rooms. I can't remember. We filled them, whatever it was. And it was that building was on an alleyway. It was just sand down to the beach. And there were just little tiny shanties all along the alleyway of just aluminum and tin, ramshackle structures that people lived in. And every day we would walk down with our boards and they would come out and smile and say, hello, hello. And the little kids would be running around playing. And this is early in the morning. And it was just smiles, pure sunshine. These were such radiant people. And they didn't have much material wise, but they were so joyful. And they would invite us in for coffee. I was like, these people, I probably made more in 1 hour than they would make in 3 days. working, and they're inviting me in to have coffee, and it was just and also you got to consider that that was when I was in my 20s too, so that really shifted my perspective and kept me it kind of stayed with me as like an inner compass of sorts. It just yeah, there are lots of influences that have done that. It's like my inner compass is made up of all these different experiences and words and actions of other people. So yeah, I know I go off. Sorry. Let's see. Okay, Katie has a question. Oh, let's see. Wait, sorry, I missed a lot of people. Okay, Boring Darmiga says, just quit my job and an ICU, cannot do it anymore. Planning to attempt a move overseas. Hey, good for you. Have some savings, but not sure yet how to earn an income while abroad. Well, I mean, there are a lot of opportunities if you decide to just get a part-time remote job. That's always feasible. Um, I think there's something called flex jobs. It's a website. I've never used it, but I see advertisements for it all the time. Um, I have two YouTube accounts, one for this channel and then just one that I watch videos on because I don't want to clutter this one with that stuff. Um, and on this one, I don't have YouTube Premium. So yeah, I see the Flex Jobs ad a lot. Not sure if that's interesting, but there's YouTube. I'm sure you have skills and talents that you could um, generate an income with online. It's just you have to build a community for yourself. Let's see, Katie says, when you go to a new area like this, do you tend to settle into a daily routine and feel at home quite quickly? Yes, I do. There are some days where I will I definitely have my places I like to go, and I always find them very quickly. It's usually not hard, and I don't know why it is. I can just tell, okay, this is my spot or one of my spots. But I do explore regularly. Like when I finish this live stream, I have a few things to do. And then I'm going off to this random place that I stumbled upon, 3 days ago in the pouring rain when I went on the other side of the water to go to a stationery shop. Do you know how hard it is to find just basic things here? It is ridiculous. Like finding just legal notepads and stuff like that is almost impossible unless you order it on Shopee, which my Airbnb host she's going to order some things for me. Everything is this is the least easy Southeast Asian country to function in, and I've been to most of them. So like just basic things are just you have to trek to find them, and if you don't find them, then they're only available online. It's very interesting. That's I'm saying that if you're not in Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, it's a little bit easier, but still, even then, it's a trek. Let's see. But I want to make a point is that I always make it a regular practice to just go walking somewhere I haven't been before and see what I discover. I don't follow guidebooks. Again, I joke. I have guidebooks to read about history and stuff like that because that's why they're useful. But I don't usually follow the where to go because I don't want to end up where all the tourists are all the time. I'd rather just check out the different neighborhoods, walk and wander, find new things. Let's see. APD says it almost feels like people are wasting their lives here. Why stay if you could take your savings to Asia and be 10 times happier overall? Yeah, that's interesting. I actually don't think everyone would be happy in Asia. I actually don't think a lot of people would be happy outside of their country. But I do believe that a reasonable cost of living is available to people in the US, in Canada, and Europe. Europe's getting a little harder because a lot of the countries within the EU, not all of Europe, but many countries within the EU are constantly increasing regulations to the point of making it almost impossible for people to homestead and to homeschool their kids. So that's I don't know about Canada because I'm not from Canada, so I can't speak, but I do have family in Europe and friends, and they constantly complain about certain things, and that's one of them. Um, but in the US, we still and it goes state by state, but there are certain states that are amazing for off-grid living. And while you do need some cash to get started to set up, for sure, it's not cheap to get started, although you can do it. Gosh, there's a great channel about a couple. If I ever find it, I will share it in my community posts. I've listened to a few of their videos, and I think they were in California, and they were dirt broke. They were like in the negative, and they ended up selling. They were renting. They sold everything they owned, bought some land with seller financing. And they had less than $2,000 to their name by the time they finished everything, and they relocated to the town where they bought that land in, and they lived in a camper, used old camper. And then they started working slowly in this remote area. Oh, this small town, but it was a remote area. And they're thriving. They're doing amazing work. The wife works in town, and the husband does YouTube, and she joins him occasionally. And they also share where they bought the land, because the website, I think it was billyland.com. I think Billy, Billy. And he recommends it because he actually got to know the people who run the website, and they're legit. So that's why he recommends it. But there are opportunities, I lived on a rural homestead for a few years, and I had a huge garden, and there is nothing more satisfying than having an organic garden and going out back, picking your food and bringing it back in. And I would get eggs from people up the road. Awesome. Totally free range chickens to the truest, not the ones that you see in the store where they're let outdoors for maybe like 7 minutes a day, and then they free roam and range inside a coop with a bunch of other chickens in terrible conditions. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about chickens that wander the woods and the fields and then come back in when they're summoned. That is yeah, those eggs taste like nothing you can imagine. And and then getting fish from lakes and streams and rivers, and just I don't know. And also, I lived in an area where there people hunt, and I know some people are against that, but I think if you eat meat, that is the cleanest way to do it, and the most humane, because these are animals that have lived real, true, wild lives, and they're feeding on living foods. And there's something really powerful about living foods. So, yeah, I don't know. You get me off on that tangent too, but I'm just saying that there is so much satisfaction and beautiful living that can be had in the United States, and everyone thinks you need to be rich to do it. There is that other young woman, I mentioned her before. What's her name? Fasula, I think is her last name. I'm gonna look her up. Hold on. Mm, sorry, I can't find it right now. I don't subscribe to her channel, but I did save one of her videos. I will look it up and put it in the comments. Let's see, I'm missing a 10 here. Let's see. Riff Raff says, very interesting about the intentional communities. I see several in nearby areas that I knew nothing about. Yeah, and I kind of say it, a lot of them are kind of like Amish, and not necessarily Amish in the no tech, but Amish in the fact that they're very much in the supporting of one another, and it just brings people together. Um, yeah, there's just something really dynamic about finding a really good intentional community and that division of labor, but it also, not just because it makes life simpler for everyone, but it also means you get to develop different skills. A lot of people go to intentional communities with no skills whatsoever, and they learn how to grow their own food. They learn how to build homes. They learn how to do all these things that they thought that they could never do because they were city people. And a lot of self-confidence comes from learning those kind of skills. If you can, I call them, pro-life skills, and I don't mean that in the other context that we're talking about, but they are life supporting skills. And the more of those that you develop, whether it's making clothes, learning how to cook, learning how to grow food, learning how to fish, learning how to build a home, hunting, whatever your thing is, the more of those you learn, the more satisfying life, I believe, becomes, in my experience. Let's see. Usama asks, what are your thoughts on West Virginia? I live in the DC area where the cost of living and stress levels are very high. I've thought about getting a homestead there for the stunning beauty and low cost of living. Yes, and West Virginia is beautiful, but I will say two things about it. One, certain towns in Appalachia, particularly in West Virginia, I heard it's true in other states, but I don't have too much personal experience or knowledge. But I will say in West Virginia, there are certain areas that are not welcoming to people from outside. Also, I would go and I would look at the towns on Ascend, West Virginia. I think it's Ascend WV. Let me look it up for you. Ascend West Virginia, not necessarily to join their program because it's only for remote workers, but just to see where they have their specific towns that they are recruiting people to come live in, because those are the ones that generally have good infrastructure and they have jobs, and they also have thriving communities that are not overrun by drugs. West Virginia does have a major drug problem. Not all of West Virginia, but certain areas do. So yeah, the more depressed areas do. So if you just, I would look on Ascend West Virginia, and I would start using that as a guidepost personally, if I were in your shoes, to see what great towns are out there and go from there. I hope that's helpful. Free range is good. Grass-fed is even better when it comes to chickens. Well, yeah, absolutely. Let's see. But I think chickens chickens are best when they feed what they feed on what they want to feed. That's when they're the most healthy, because chickens are not the smartest of creatures, but they are still guided by natural intelligence in the sense that they know what's best for them. Let's see. Oh wow, let's see, I'm missing a lot here. All right, Freedom by Design says, I'm 43, opted out 15 months ago, saved up runway, traveling the world, balancing long-term house sitting and month-long Airbnbs to keep expenses super low while building a nomad income. Way better life. Good for you. That sounds awesome. Yeah, another option if you want to develop some skills is to go woof, and that is to volunteer on organic farms around the world. I've mentioned this before, but it's awesome. I've done it a couple times, and I highly recommend. You learn a lot. And you get to review the farms, and they get to review you. You can learn construction skills. You can learn food growing skills. You can learn all sorts of things. You can learn plumbing doing this. It's really fascinating. So let me see if I can pull that up. I'm going to put the link in the chat. Bear with me. And it's all over the world. You do have to sign up for a membership. I'm not sponsored by any of these people or anything that I'm putting these links in. It's from knowledge and experience. And I just put in the chat. That is an awesome opportunity to see the world and to keep costs low. How it works is that you volunteer for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours a day for 5 to 6 days a week. And then you get free meals usually and free housing. And you get to be in different parts of the world, which is really awesome. Does Amazon, okay, riffraff, does Amazon deliver to Vietnam? I see there are no Amazon lockers in the country. No Amazon. Nope. They have Shopee, which is, I believe, a Singapore online equivalent. Lester, welcome all the way from South Korea. Yay. I love South Korea. I used to live there. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the channel, but I lived in Seoul, and yeah, that was way back when, though. That was pre-2010. Before then, yeah. This was when I lived in South Korea, it was so far advanced tech-wise compared to the US and other places. They had these huge tower type structures mounted into the sidewalks in Gangnam and Seoul. And they had a camera, and you could take a photo just standing on the street smiling, and then you could type in an email address and send it to anyone in the world. And I remember doing that and sending it to my mother, because my dad and stepmother actually, until about 3 or 4 years ago, they didn't use the internet. I'm surprised that they're using it in their 70s and 80s right now, but yeah, it was really fun. I loved living in Seoul, and the Koreans are a vibrant and wonderful people. Let's see. Boring Darmiga says, oh, she's responding. Okay. Let's see. John Mendoza, hello. Welcome to Alive. Awesome. Thank you for being here. APD says, so next Tuesday, I have to bring my neighbor Richard to the airport. He's fleeing to Cambodia, saving the whole year to do so because he is also very tired of Europe. Yes, and you know, the thing about Cambodia is that if you are comfortable living a very simple life, I mean, you could live on less than $1,000 US. Yep, for sure. Yeah, and if you don't mind eating local food, it's very easy to do so. And I think that's, a lot of people ask me, foreigners I meet here, and also some people of my personal life have asked me, why I didn't go to the Philippines. And I was like, yeah, the Filipino people are super friendly. Nothing against the Filipino people, but I don't like the food. It's actually more expensive to live in the Philippines, but I also don't want to be somewhere where American influence is like so strong. If I I want to be, if I'm going to live abroad, I want to feel like I am somewhere very, very different. And the overpresence of Americans and American culture just, I don't know, I think it kind of takes away something from it. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, I hope your neighbor has a great time in Cambodia. The Cambodian people are lovely. Riffraff, yes, Amish and Mennonite around here. Very cool. Yes, I have lived in areas with the Amish and Mennonite presence, and it is fascinating. They come up against their own challenges because tech is starting to, like, how do I say, starting to creep in on their communities. Also, because I forget what it's called when the kids turn 18, they get to go off and go out into the world. And then if they choose to come home, then they officially become Amish. But it's not until they decide. Some people never go off at 18. They choose to stay with their families and become officially Amish immediately. But yeah, the families who have, oh gosh, it's going to bother me. Bear with me. I think it's something Springer. Kids leave home at 18. Rumspringa, that's what it's called. So yeah, that's that. When they go out into the world and then they start having tech come into their lives, then it's presents a lot of challenges. But for the most part, buying food from the Amish and getting things built by the Amish is wonderful. And they're just nice people. Cheryl's in Arizona and she's late but present. Awesome. Thank you for being here, Cheryl. It's always nice to see your name pop up. John Mendoza, you remind me of Timothy J. Award channel. Both of you have great content. Why, thank you very much. I don't, Timothy J. What's the award part? Fill me in. All right, Riff Raff. Welcome, Cheryl. Oh, that's nice of you to welcome her. Freedom by Design says, as someone who grew up in the suburbs, I find it so fulfilling to develop these natural world skills. Awesome. Yeah, and what you're doing, you can easily do that. Also, the other one, and I didn't mention this in another live stream, is HelpX. I think it's .net, but it's HelpX. I think it's this. And you can travel the world doing this. I don't remember if I said this, but I met a couple in their 50s on the Camino when I did the Camino, that pilgrimage over the Pyrenees in France and across Spain to Santiago de Compostela. I met an American couple and they were in their 50s and they had retired early, sold everything, and they had been traveling the world for 1 year doing volunteer work on HelpX. And yeah, they had been all over the place. They had been in Morocco, they had been in Croatia, they had been in France. They were doing a segment of the Camino. They weren't doing the whole thing. And there were several other countries they'd been to, but I can't remember. And they were the ones who turned me onto that website. It was very cool. Let's see what else. Brian says, is the young woman you're thinking of the one with an interesting name and always wears a big bun hairstyle? No, that's not the one I'm thinking of. Oh, I mentioned, oh, it's going to bother me. No, but if I come up with it, I will let you know. You're welcome, Usama. Yes, freedom by design. I share all of these things because I really, people don't realize how many opportunities there are in the world to go do really amazing things that don't cost a lot of money. And even if you have plenty of money, these are still immensely rewarding experiences. Now, all opportunities on HelpX and Woof, for example, are not going to be equal. Some are going to be marvelous and some are not going to be. But that's just life. And you just roll with it. If it's not a great experience, you move on to the next. So, yeah, and that's why I share these opportunities because, I've used them myself and I don't know, there's so much richness to be had. Everyone thinks that you need tons of money to live a very um, rich life. And by rich, I mean full of experience and nuance and just learning and joy. You don't need tons of money for that. But if you are locked into the mainstream mindset or that conformist point of view, you will never see the opportunities. You won't even go looking. So yeah, you just don't have the eyes to see. So awesome. Kudos to you. Dharmiga says, have you been to Malaysia? Yes, I've been to Malaysia many, many times. And actually, one place I like Malaysia. The Malaysians are very laid back, which I appreciate. I do know people who have done business in Malaysia and have found that a little frustrating. They're a little too laid back when it comes to work. But for the most part, in terms of like quality of life, I like being around Malaysians. They're easygoing. They're generally pleasant people. Um, Malaysia itself has such an interesting mix of cuisines and cultures. You've got the Chinese influence, you got the Malay, and you've got the Southern Indian. And that in and of that trifecta of food is phenomenal. And also it just makes it interesting to be around. I particularly love Georgetown in Penang, and I think I'll go back. I think I will be going back. Yes, riffraff, Rumspringa, you put it in there too. Yeah, I didn't see that. I was in another window typing it in and trying to find out from Google. Osama. Yes, Tim Ward has an excellent channel. Okay, that's his name. Okay, great. Well, I'll look him up. That's funny. Thank you. Oh, no dash. Thank you, Darmiga. Yes, it's helpx.net, no dash. I'll just put it in the chat. Okay, let's see. Adrian, always enjoy watching your lives from Montana. Oh, thank you so much, Adrian. Yeah, I love that I have such a dynamic and diverse audience. It's really cool. Our community. This is so much more than an audience. Let's see. Purposeful Sound. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Big Al in the Philippines. Hello from Kalinga. Awesome. Welcome. Riff Raff, good evening. Oh, thank you for welcoming people. That's awesome. Freedom by Design. Thanks for sharing these resources. As someone who also likes staying away from the US crowds, would I be more likely to love or hate Bali? Certainly some great people, but I like small towns, less noise. You know, you could go to the north of Bali. It's a lot more laid back. And now, granted, there were not many foreigners at all when I lived in Bali. in northern Bali. Uh, it was really cool in that way. I don't know what it's like now because that was, gosh, I left 11 years ago. So yeah, I would say, well, 11 and a half years ago, basically. We're getting there. But you could check out the north of Bali. If you go, so Bali's interesting. You'll see more Americans in Ubud, but it's still a mix of foreigners. It's not like American dominant per se. Uh, if there is one population that dominates Bali, it's Australians, and particularly the southern half of the island. I hope that's helpful. Let's see. Um, oh, my top five. That's really hard, Usama. Usama asked, what are the 5 places in the US where you find the natural beauty is stunning? Like your top five. Well, the US is gorgeous all around. I can give you regions, but particular states, I personally find Northern California gorgeous. I love the Olympic Peninsula. Well, this is a state, the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. I like the White Mountains in the Northeast. I think anywhere along the Appalachian Trail is going to be really interesting in terms of you can find some interesting smaller towns there. Just the Appalachian Trail is, I've done segments, but not a few segments. I don't want anyone to think I'm some overachiever who's done tons of them. Um, and it's beautiful. It really is. I think, most states are stunning. You just have to go and find them. I think the Hawaiian Islands are gorgeous. I think um, I think there's a lot to be had. I think if you're up for seasonal work, I do have a video on that. The thumbnail, I don't remember exactly what the video is called, but the thumbnail, it's one of my earliest videos and it says travel jobs. If you want to do seasonal work, that's a great way to, Montana's actually, whew, that's gorgeous. If you want to explore different places and see if you find places that align with you and your values, seasonal work is a great way to do it because you can get paid to go to all these places that people spend a ton of money to visit. It's kind of a nice deal. Let's see. What else do we have here? Okay. Freedom by design. Sorry if I missed the beginning. What are a few places in the world you want to experience that you haven't and why? So I'd love to climb or hike Mount Fuji and watch the sunrise. It's just been on my list for a long time, and I have been to Japan before, but it just never lined up. So I will go back to Japan to do that. And I don't know, there's just something very iconic about Mount Fuji. And if you're in Japan and you're anywhere near Mount Fuji and you can see there's just something alluring about it to me. Sometimes you can't really explain why. I think that's really hard. What else? I'd really like to go surfing in Fiji. Yeah. Also, just because the Fijian people are so nice. I know some Fijian people, or I did when I was younger, and they were amazing. Another place I'd like to go is the Republic of Georgia. Just for the dynamic landscape. I also hear that people are wonderful and the food is beautiful. They are one of those countries that have not fully bought into the whole toxic pesticide thing. I mean, yes, they do use some, but there are a lot of just naturally grown foods throughout the country, and they also have beautiful beaches and mountains. So that's one. I, hmm, I don't know. There are other parts of the world that I'd like to go to in countries that I've visited but have not seen yet. So there are parts of Slovenia I haven't seen yet that I'd like to go back to. I will be returning to Eastern Europe at some point. I hope within the next year or so. I would like to go back to Costa Rica. And I'd like to go to El Salvador. El Salvador, because what's happening in that country in terms of it being turned around and becoming the safest country in Latin America in the space of 5 years is astonishing to me. And having a freedom-minded president, and I mean free. I don't mean the illusion of freedom that we in the US have, is something that is super appealing to me. Yeah. Also, it's just beautiful there, period. So, yeah. Mm, yes, Hawaii is beautiful. Um, Freedom by Design says, I can only imagine the views of Mount Fuji with feet on the ground. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Lester says, yes, Lester, I'm sorry, I don't know if you mentioned it, but I love South Korea. I lived there prior to 2010, actually, 2008, 2009. And I lived in Seoul, and it was phenomenal. Uh, I would say that the two cultures, the one thing that the Americans and the Koreans have in common is that they have a very unhealthy work culture. Very unhealthy. It's the only reason why I don't live and work in South Korea anymore. Because my health went down the tubes trying to live that lifestyle, and it just didn't suit me. Um, the work yourself into the ground kind of mentality. And I noticed in South Korea that there's this constant, it's the show face culture, like stay in the office, keep your seat warm to give the illusion that you are loyal. I'm not into it. But I love Korea and the Korean people and the history of the culture, and just, I mean, the fact that that country has like a 98, I think it's a 98%. It's a very high literacy rate, and then the invention of Hangul, the Korean alphabet, was just brilliant by, I think it was, I can't remember his name. I think it was the emperor who invented it, but yeah. Uh, Korea is just an amazing place, straight up. I love it. And I plan to go back, actually, just for a visit, not to live and work. I'm not going to rejoin that culture. Yes, the sunrise from the summit of Haleakala is beautiful. Adrian says, I'm gleaning as much information from your wealth of travels. I have been grounded and just had my last child leave for college. And for the first time in 37 years, I am free to do whatever I want. Adrian, congratulations. Good for you. I'm sure you have some like really, you know, happy, healthy adult kids out there in the world who will be excited for you and celebrate your whatever's next, whatever next adventure you decide for yourself now that you are free to do as you wish. The Empty Nester Club. I like that. All right. Ah, King Sejong. Thank you. Yes. I'm thinking Japan emperors. All right. Thank you. Yeah, see, everyone's celebrating for you, Adrian. I hope you go off and do something amazing. Do something wonderful for yourself. It doesn't have to cost a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of wonderful experiences to be had out in the world. Any more questions or topics that anyone would like to talk about? Yeah, I'm having a great time, but it's been an hour, and I realize that, for some people it might be bedtime. I know what you mean, Adrian. MS 1295 says, I recently rewatched your video on leaving behind ambitions and prioritizing lifestyle. I feel concerned as I'm getting older and thinking about saving for retirement. I'm currently not earning a lot. Yeah, and that's a reasonable concern. I mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you were here, MS, but I'm putting the link right in the description box. We were talking about intentional communities, and that's actually, you bring up a very good point. A lot of Western societies do not value the elderly, but also Western societies are also set up and structured in a way where, people have to work super hard just to get by. And then they end up having to put their parents in care facilities and those sorts of things, or people have to afford their own care facilities, which are not cheap. And there's the intentional community, I think, will be a common way to age. I saw one, I think it was a documentary on one in Denmark many years ago, and it was people of all ages that were present in the community. And it shows that everyone has value because the elderly folks would still cook or clean every now and then if they could. If they couldn't, then everyone looked after them, which is an amazing way to consider retiring. And then when the people who were elderly could cook, clean, or look after kids, they would do that part time. But it's the notion that of shared responsibility, and that also costing a lot less. And it's going back to a way in which we all used to live anyway. I mean, before most of us were alive, of course, but that it's nothing new. It's just it's normal, but it's bringing it all into a smaller environment. This used to be how towns and villages operated all over the place. The more we moved into the Industrial Revolution and division of labor and all these other things, it's just, it fractured every part of our lives, whereas our lives used to be more holistic, as in, there wasn't all these redundancies. I was thinking that I was thinking about the redundancies in our lives. For example, a lot of people used to live subsistence farming lives, for example. So they grew their own food and they would sometimes grow most of their own food, but they would grow extra of certain things or raise certain livestock or whatever it was, whether it's eggs, livestock, or vegetables and fruit. And they would grow or raise a little extra and then use that to trade for other things that they needed. And then they would work a little bit for money to buy the things or pay for the things that they couldn't provide for themselves. And while I'm not going to say that that works easy, I worked on an organic farm full time. I know what it means to work, and it's not easy work, but it's fulfilling work. And you see immediate real world results. Like you take that food home and you feed yourself when you work at an organic farm. And and when I lived on that homestead, which was simultaneous actually, there's nothing more satisfying than eating the food you grow. It is, and and the food you grow is a euphemism because quite frankly we're co-creating with nature, but you know what I mean. So I think people don't realize the redundancy in modern life. So if you think about the lifestyle that I just spoke about, that was community and family time and exercise and education. The children would learn from their parents, and this is how the Amish live. There is no redundancy. It's like everyone helps each other. So there's the community, there's the socializing, there's that human connection. They also work with their families. So there's family time all wrapped into one. There's time in nature. They're getting sunlight. There's just and now we go from one box to another box. Oh, we leave our house one box, we get in a car, another box, or a subway car or a bus to go to another box. And then when we leave that box, which is work, we get in another box, a vehicle or some mode of transportation to go to another box to exercise. And it's all these things. And then we have to go, and our kids need to have activities to go to because they don't have anything going on normally. Like they're not learning extra skills. They don't have time to relax and, pick up an instrument and teach themselves, because if you've ever seen a kid teach themselves something, it's amazing. Anyone can figure things out. They don't need formal instruction all the time. And if you do want some instruction, it's on YouTube. I mean, yeah, so there's all that redundancy because, back in the day, you didn't need to go to a gym if you're, I don't know if you've ever, had to haul and stack bales of hay. I have. You will know that you don't need a gym membership for that. You've got your sunlight. you've got your fresh air, you've got your camaraderie with all your fellow coworkers or community members when you're doing this, and you've got your exercise. So, yeah, I mean, just think about all the redundancy that's built. And also, in the 50s, I think it was in Britain. I just this popped into my head, and this is definitely a different era I'm talking about, but 50s, not way back when, but the 50s in Britain, they used to have these community wash centers. I can't remember what they called them. I'm sorry, I didn't live in Britain at that time. I wasn't even alive, of course. But they had these community wash places, and all the women would go and do their laundry there. They were like laundromats, but it was a social hub. Now the laundromat is not a social hub. Laundromats usually are very filthy and whatever, at least in America, or they're just not very sociable. But that was where the women gathered, and it was quite, and they had coffee and stuff like that, or tea. And we just have to fragment everything in modern life now, or that's how modern life has been set up. Everything is fragmented. So there's all this redundancy, and it actually consumes way more time. It consumes way more time than the way we used to live. I mean, you don't need to go socialize, and you don't need to go exercise, and you don't need to do this and that and this and that if you've done it all in one, or many things in one. And that's where we get things wrong. And yes, I recommend a book by Eric Brende. I'll write his name in the. It's a fascinating book. He also lives in a city now, but he used to live with the Amish, so, or a very strict. I think it's called Switching Off. Let me just look. I recommend this book. He's a brilliant writer. Better Off. That's what it's called. Better Off. Okay, so I've missed a lot here, so I'm going to go back in the comments, so bear with me. MS says, haha, I moved to an eco village about a year ago in upstate New York, but it's not cheap to live here. Yeah, a lot of those eco villages are actually very expensive. The moment they have eco village in it, I kind of worry, because usually that's like expensive. Uh, they attract, well, like they usually mean that they were developed by wealthy folks. Yeah, they're usually the ones who started, once eco village, that word eco village is thrown into the mix, at least in the US. I'm not saying anything about the rest of the world, but in the US, that's the case. Freedom by Design says, what's one of your worst travel or living abroad experiences? What did you learn from it? And how has that knowledge benefited you since? Fear holds many back. I bet you can reinforce the opposite. So, oh, that's interesting. I would say I don't like throwing certain places under the bus, because, some people may have good experiences there. But I will say that there was actually, okay, so that's hard. There are two that come to mind. Two, actually three. Okay, I'm gonna share the one in Sweden, because it actually turned out to be super positive. There was just one person who was not awesome. So, and I can't remember if I've shared this in a live stream, but just in case, I'll share the story. So I was on a train from Denmark to Sweden. I was headed from Copenhagen to Stockholm, and there was the train broke down, and there was like an emergency change. They made us get off the train and switch trains. And across from me were two young Swedish guys, spoke perfect English. I mean, if they didn't look so Swedish, I would have thought they were American. Their accent was totally neutral, or Canadian. They didn't have the Canadian O and A thing that they do, but it was very neutral, North American accent. And they told me, they translated what was on the message that the conductor was conveying, because it was all in Swedish and Danish, but not English. And they said, we need to get up and go. And they were kind of ushering people off the train quite quickly. And I grabbed both of my bags. Well, I had two bags, a smaller backpack and a larger backpack. And I went to grab two bags, and something distracted me, and I dropped something, and I went to pick it up. And then they were ushering us off, and I grabbed my big bag and realized I forgot my small bag on the rack above the seat. And I realized that far too late. So I, let's see, or maybe, yeah, I can't remember actually. Gosh, wow, it's been a long time. I can't remember if I was actually leaving Sweden, going to Denmark, or yeah, it's hard. But anyway, the point of the matter is that in Sweden, I got stuck in Malmo. I couldn't remember if I was leaving Sweden. I think I was leaving, to be honest, not going in. And I went to reach for the small bag in the train station in Malmo and realized I had forgotten it. And because of the broken down train, or the connection I was supposed to make was going to be missed. And so they gave me a voucher for a free hotel stay. So I took this voucher to the hotel that they got it for, but I had no money. So I had a place to live, no money. But the guy at this hotel desk was an ass. I'm sorry. This guy was he's bad karma for him, man. Um, but I called my parents and, asked if they could send me money by Western Union, and, just $100 until I find my bag. And I didn't have, and I should say that my bag had my passport, my bank cards. Oh man, it had some writing in it that I was working on a small project, and it was done by hand, but it had not been typed. So that was the only copy. And I get there and I'm hungry and I'm worried because I'm going to have to go to the embassy and notify them of a lost passport. I went to the train station, by the way, to see if they had it, but the person with the key, there's one person with the key to the lost and found, and they had already gone home. So I didn't know if they had grabbed the bag or not. So that uncertainty was stressful. And this guy, and I'm hungry, I have no money. And this guy was a total ass. And I said, I don't have any money to buy food. Do you have any food in the hotel? And I can have a family member call and pay for it over the phone with their credit card. And he says, nope, our dinner buffet is finished. And I said, please. I said, if you were I said, I lost my bag. And he amazingly let me check in without a passport. I was like, gosh, it was only because I had a photocopy of my passport in my backpack that I had grabbed. And I said I promised to present him with my passport or a document from the US Embassy as soon as I got it. And he just was relentless. And he finally says, oh, there's some leftover, I don't remember what, potatoes and something. And he gave me this tiny little plate. And I thanked him, and I just wanted to tell him, you're an effing, but I didn't. Um, and yeah, I ate it. And my parents, well, my mother actually wired me, I think she wired me $150 just to tide me over in Malmo, Sweden. And by the way, I just want to say that every other person I encountered in Malmo, Sweden was amazing. I know Malmo's gone through a lot of rough stuff since that happened to me. This was almost 20 years ago. So, I haven't been back to Malmo since. And yeah, I went to the most amazing tea house with the best teas ever. I dreamt of their teas for years. I wish I remember what it's called. I could visually walk to it though. I have a photographic memory. Uh, I I'm not I'm good with maps, but and I have a good sense of direction, but I am very visual. Anyway, so what happened was is I had to wait till the next day, and this guy wouldn't let me have breakfast. It was so bad. So then I'm able to go to the place where I can collect my money from Western Union. I go feed myself. I go to the tea house that I mentioned to you. And finally, by 9 o'clock, the lost and found is open. The person with the key is there, and my bag is there. Okay. My bag is there. Not a thing missing. Seriously, not 1 euro cent missing. And they were so kind to me, and they just asked me if I could tell them what's inside the bag. So I listed several things, and I told them the name that they would see on the passport. And they opened it up, looked at the passport, and they're like, "That's definitely you." And they handed it back to me, and they gave me my bag, and I was just so appreciative of how honest and kind they were. And everyone was just so, so kind. And it was a terrible situation in another country that may have turned out very, very differently. I may have ended up with a very nice, for example, front desk worker who would have fed me and even offered to buy me a meal, but I may have ended up with my bag being stolen. So, I feel like I got the easy end of the stick. Gosh, I think I'm um, missing a lot of comments here. Let's see. Freedom by design. What's one of your okay, that was the question. Yep. Lester says, I stayed Halifax, Canada, originally from Korea for 6 months, but for some reason I developed health issues, autoimmune disease, which made me afraid of being outside my home country. I don't blame you, Lester. I don't blame you. Yeah. Um, yeah, if you feel healthier at home, there's nothing wrong with staying at home in Korea. It's an amazing country. Because healthcare accessibility was awful in Canada. Yeah, a lot of the public health systems, they were great, I believe, but now they are overrun and understaffed, and people have to wait a long time, and it's just, yeah, it's not great. So how do I deal with chronic healthcare issues while traveling? You know, I go to international hospitals. That's what I do, to be honest. They're usually the best. I don't go to the local hospitals. I know that some people will say that Vietnamese local hospitals are better, but I don't know. The facilities are really clean in most international hospitals I've been in. And I've been in several. I've been in an international hospital in Greece, South Korea, Thailand, Vietnam. So, yeah, I would say the international hospitals are the way to go. There's, yeah, that's my only answer for you. I don't believe that I have. I'm still figuring out what's going on, but I don't believe that my situation is chronic, which is good. Okay. Thank you very much, Freedom by Design. I will fix that coaching link. It is just a link to submit their interest. Where did you see that, by the way? Is that in the description box? Let me know. Riff Raff, how is your D3 level holding up with all the rain in Da Nang? Well, it's not optimal, but I do go out, even in the rain. You can still get UVB light, which is what you need so D3 is actually a hormone. It's not a vitamin, even though we call it a vitamin. It's actually a hormone. And to create it, we need UVB light. And this is, if you want to check into this, anyone, Dr. Jack Kruse, that's Kruse, and Dr. Alexis Cowan, they are two people to start with. And they talk all about biological how do I put this? Circadian biology or circadian rhythms. Anyway, yep. So I am getting UVB light. Maybe I'm getting probably far more than most people who are living in places where it's heading into winter and it's dropping below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but not as much as I normally like. But I do go out and walk the beach, even in the rain. I go out, so at least my face and my hands and my legs from my knees down are getting that light through the clouds. And you can always get it through the clouds. Don't be fooled. and my eyes are getting it too because I keep, aside from live streaming, I tried to keep the windows and doors open for the natural light because that natural sunlight has all the UVB in it too. But they started construction right behind me, and it's just like, oh, I can't live stream with that. So yeah. But thank you for asking. It'll get better. All right. Wow, I've missed a lot. I've got to catch up. Trading competencies. Yes, Purposeful Sound says something awesome. This is how we got here, trading competencies. Yes, and we were a lot more like Renaissance people back in the day, and I hope we move towards that because this system of extraction of time, money, and energy only functions because we have lost our ability to be Renaissance men and women. Well, we have lost our natural tendency to be jacks of all trades and then also to trade. And then we also had skills that we were stronger in than others, and we would trade those skills and those goods as a result. I agree with you 100%. Yes, MS, modern life does not make sense. It really doesn't. It makes sense for the system because the system was designed for this exact reason, but it doesn't make sense for the human. The Industrial Revolution, while great in some ways, I could do without it, quite frankly. I mean, I would miss not having this kind of community because how else can you attract a community of like-minded people from all over the world to share ideas and talk? I mean, this is phenomenal to me. I love this. But at the same time, I do believe that we would live better quality of lives if we, in terms of peace and community. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And so you're in an eco village, but maybe intentional communities, MS, would be more up your alley. A lot of them are a lot more affordable and it's shared work. Yep. Absolutely. That may be what you look for your later years. Lene's here. Do I celebrate Halloween? No, I forgot it's Halloween. It's actually November 1st here in Vietnam, the morning. But no, I don't. I'm not a big holiday person. It's I enjoy the atmosphere of Christmas, but like, the music and the decorations and everything. And I like the sentiment of Thanksgiving. I mean, I'll engage in Thanksgiving meals, but and Halloween, I haven't dressed up. I think I dressed up once after being a kid, and that was in my 20s in college, just once. And I just found it, I don't know, I'm not into it. I'm not into commercial holidays, really, quite frankly. Nothing wrong with it if you're into it. It's not my thing. Okay, Adrian says another beauty of the community model is the elderly and the youngsters live together. Yes, and that's exactly what I was mentioning regarding that Danish one I saw the documentary of quite a long time ago. It's that we think that people aren't valuable unless they're being productive, and that means that sometimes the children and the elderly fall by the wayside. Whereas in intentional communities or that model, everyone's valuable. Everyone's valuable. Even if someone can't physically do things, they have so much wisdom and experience to share with people of all of ages. And that in and of itself brings immense value. And just someone's presence and their energy and their nature is, yeah. We degrade and diminish people too much just because they don't fit into the conformist idea of what is valuable. Yeah, it's really a shame, but things are changing. I really do believe that they're moving in a good direction. Papaya Riser tried the mud bath hot springs in Nha Trang, Vietnam. Great healthy experience. No, I haven't been to Nha Trang, and I'm not sure if I'm interested in going there. I may. I know it's super touristy, even more so than Da Nang, and maybe I will. We'll see. But that's a great idea. Thank you. If I do go, I will check it out. Julian, welcome. Yes, I do speak some Spanish, but it's been quite a while, to be honest. I haven't used it in like 7, 8 years, so I'm a bit rusty. Lester, did you think food culture is specifically much worse in North America compared to Asia or Europe? I mean, in regard to healthy ingredients, diet, and food system. On Lester, great question. On a large scale, yes, it is worse. And I can't speak for Canada, but in the US, it is worse. I've been to Canada a handful of times, but they've always been for short trips. That's why I say can't speak for Canada. But I think the one thing that's very interesting about the US is despite having a huge agricultural industry with big ag being mega sized farms and everything like that, the US has a very interesting and growing small organic food culture. So you have lots of small organic farms popping up all over the place. And it's really a thriving and expanding movement. And that, I believe, is amazing and will eventually become the decentralized model of the future for the US. And again, there will be people who will prefer the big ag, urban living, that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of people are moving into smaller communities. They're seeing that that's where the quality of life is going to be. And it's, it's slowly gaining steam, but it's happening. And I believe that I was able to eat very well. It was expensive, I'm not going to lie, to buy organic, domestically raised food, even local food, but I was happy to spend less money on other things and give that money to people who are growing and raising healthy food for me. So, yeah. Europe has a slightly, I would say, a lot better quality of food than the US. I don't know about Canada. Maybe Canada and Europe are comparable. I do believe that Canada has better quality of food than the US in general, in terms of overall. But their climate doesn't make the US is much better for growing food just because the latitudes, temperatures are better for raising food in general. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's very hard. Europe, I think, is evolving more towards the American model, unfortunately. They started tolerating more things, which is a shame, but they're still a lot stricter than the US. Let's see. Let's see. Papaya. Yes, thank you very much for those tips. I'm going to write that down. She's just giving me tips on where to check out in Vietnam. I am going to have to look into it, though, because yeah, thank you. Yes, she says no airport equals no digital nomads. Yeah, that would be really cool. I just need to look into whether they've been totally devastated, these two places that you suggested. Thank you so much. It's very cool of you. Whether they've been devastated by the floods, because right now, like Hue and Hoi An are totally demolished by the floods. Hue, yes, Hoi An less so, but still bad. Um, let's see. Okay, thank you very much, Freedom by Design. I will check that out. Yes, Dr. Jack Cruz. Yeah, yep, that's the right spelling. Testimona, thanks for being here. Nice to see your name. Welcome. Do you think vitamin D production from UVB is hindered in the US due to the practice of geoengineering more so than other countries? I live in Florida and I'm outside a lot, yet many of us have low vitamin D. That's an interesting point. I did not know that about Florida and vitamin B. It could be. It could be. And I know people will say, oh, that's a conspiracy theorist, but actually it's all over the news. They admit it flat out. You can actually Google it. I mean, search it on YouTube and you'll see newscasters talking about it. So there's that. And also, some of our government officials have even admitted it. But it could possibly be. I don't know what they're actually doing. And so you have no idea. But we do have people in the world who believe it's a great idea to block out the sun. I'm like, then that means everything dies. Let's use our common sense. But testimonial, it's a real possibility. It really is. And I'm sorry to hear that. It's interesting. I don't, when it was sunny here, I didn't see any of those crazy clouds here in Vietnam. Interesting. Just an observation, because I pay attention. My mother pays attention a lot. She's always talking about clouds and stuff. So yeah, we swapped some info on that. Lester, thanks to modern technology allowing us to have this live stream and heal. Yes, exactly, Lester. That is one of the gifts of technology. It really is phenomenal. I love this. I really do. Yeah, modern technology allows people from all over the world to commune and share ideas and rethink the way we live, you know? And I truly believe that this is how we all move forward. Initially, we will, whether we stay where we are or yeah, eventually, whether we stay where we are or find somewhere new to be, it will be very locally based and community based. But I think a lot of our ideas and tools that we will use to create these local communities will come through online gatherings like this. And that's why I love it. Absolutely. Lester, you're on it. BMC, do you enjoy reading any feminist authors such as Andrea Dworkin? What are your opinions of the current state of feminism and women's rights? Thank you for that thoughtful question. No, I don't. I don't. I I don't call myself a feminist. I love all beings, and I am not, if you know the history of feminism and certain women like Gloria Steinem being paid by the government and stuff like that, then you will know that that is a movement that, while in essence has some good points, was it was kind of manufactured to divide men and women, and that is happening. You will see the pinnacle of it right now if you see all the stuff on the internet, like dividing men and women and antagonizing each other. And it's just, yeah, I'm not into it. I really am not. I actually resonate with the work more of Camille Paglia. It's spelled Paglia, but she says Paglia. Yeah, she's not a, and I'm not saying I agree with everything she says. I'm just saying that what she writes makes a lot more sense to me. Thank you for that thoughtful question. I think it was the first time I've ever received it, to be honest. But I don't focus on women's rights and whatever, because quite frankly, I have forged a very interesting life for myself. Yes, I have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace. I just took action. I immediately took action. And yeah, I really I had the issue dealt with, and wouldn't let up. But I don't constantly see myself as oppressed. I think that is the biggest problem. Is we in the West or in developed nations are fortunate enough to not um, suffer from genital mutilation like we women, and we have a lot more we have the freedoms of just like any man. And so to constantly talk about pay and all this other stuff, it's like, well, I just create my own opportunities, and if I'm content with what I've got, then that's all that matters. I don't focus on the external world so much, and I think that's where a lot of dissatisfaction comes from. If I feel that I'm being compensated fairly for the work I'm doing, great. That's all that matters. And again, thank you so much for that thoughtful question. Pamela says, I absolutely love that you are not into holidays. Saw you for what you are within the first 11 seconds I ever saw your face. Thank you, Pamela. Yeah, it's just not, I, I don't feel, and this is not like some sort of rebellion thing. As I got older, I just realized it wasn't for me. Also, and this is a very controversial perspective, and I will share it because I know if you're a parent and you've raised children, you may not like me for it, but that's okay. And that is that I don't, I think it's fun to watch children open presents, the excitement of it. I don't like how in developed nations it's become so commodified that people feel like they have to like charge thousands of dollars on their credit card to buy their kids presents. I don't like the notion that we lie to our kids and play pretend. While there was some sort of magical element to it, as a kid, it's like the notion of lying that I don't resonate with. And I'm not judging people for doing it. I'm just saying if I had kids, I would never do it. Let's put it that way. I was certainly, and then also I could get into the history of Christmas and all this other stuff. And um, and if you look at what mass means, and if you're a Christian, I find it very interesting. And this is also another thing. Like, this is a rabbit hole that people will just not love me for, and I won't go down it. But I will say that if you look at the actual word Christmas or Christ Mass, well, there's Christ, of course, but then Mass in Latin means to dismiss, MASS or MAS. So dismiss Christ. I'm like, isn't that the opposite of what? Yeah. And the whole notion, yeah. So there's that. And then also people go to Mass on Sunday to worship Christ. Um, and so you're going to Mass to dismiss Christ. I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff there that, yeah, it's a loaded bag that I don't necessarily want to open too much. But yeah, it's my 1 minute spiel on it. Freedom by design. I've always enjoyed spending time with older people and those from different regions around the world. So much wisdom and perspective and diversity. I could never live in a bubble of clones. Yeah, I resonate with that a lot too. I absolutely do. Um, there's something when you're open to it, in the US, there are lots of people with great wisdom hanging out, but they get drowned out by the noise of politics. By the crazy people in the grocery store that just dump all their life problems onto you, or just yak about their car insurance like mindlessly and won't shut up. Those kind of things. Because we're so distracted by those kind of things, we often miss the wise, wonderful people. And maybe those people who are doing that and behaving like all very extreme hardcore politics. And I don't bat for one team. That's why I see it as two sides of the same coin. And I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but as Chase Hughes, one of the world's leading behavioral experts and contractor for certain agencies of a certain country's government, has said, he said, if you are so hardcore about one side of the aisle that you only find fault with the other side, you're part of a cult. You've been programmed. And I think that's very true. And that's why I don't, on either side of the aisle, I don't tolerate that kind of conversation. But it's because of those tendencies to polarize and to be unconscious in the way we live is why I think that those older people with a lot of wisdom get overlooked in life, or we don't get to connect with them, is because in the US they're drowned out, and they often tend to hide out by themselves too, but their presence gets kind of whitewashed almost by such extreme things, people's unconscious behavior, politics, everything. Purposeful sound. Yes, one of our greatest accomplishments is that you got cut off. Is that our communication travels by the speed of light. Yeah, that's awesome. The Global Vagabond, welcome. If you make a reduced size copy of your passport to the size of a driver's license and laminate it, it works great all over the world. After you leave the airport, I rarely show the originals. That's very interesting. I've never tried that, but I think I would just do that for water safety so that my photocopy doesn't get destroyed as well. I think that's sensible. Good idea. But I probably won't present it too often. I think I just use it in case. Purposeful. Let's see. Riffraff. Great tip. Oh yeah. Let's see. Katie Ray. I think maybe you just don't resonate with the things that are contrived, and I resonate with that, and resonate with that. You resonate with that completely. Yeah. I think you might be right, Katie. I'm drawn to things that are more, how do I put it? Just whatever I gravitate towards it. And it's usually not for example, if people talk about a movie nonstop, it usually takes me a decade or two to ever see it, if I do see it, for example. There's just, I like what I like, and that's it, really. Yeah, I don't just do things or follow things because it's tradition or it's popular or whatever. Anyway, I've been yakking for an hour and 45 minutes almost. Is there anything anyone else wants to share or any questions anyone would like to ask? I'm surprised the live stream didn't drop in population when I shared my opinion on Christmas and politics, but I'm stoked that it didn't. That's nice. And that means that we have people who are here who either align with that or who can agree to disagree. And I love that. That's the way life should be. All right. Any other questions or comments before I sign off? I've really enjoyed this. All right. I left the registration open for the transformational deep dive. I was going to close it, but I'm glad I didn't because several registrations came in overnight. So if you want to join, it is available. It's a pay what you can event, and it's just because I want to make it accessible to everyone. And the link is going to be in the pinned comment on this live stream, and I will put it in the description box as well. But it's also in a community post, which you can see. And it's going to be at, it's tomorrow for you, for a lot of you folks, or some of you in Europe, it's already the 1st, but it is November 1st at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about, I'm going to share, it's by Zoom, and I'm going to talk about ways to notice and remove destructive patterns in your life. And we're going to do some guided meditations. I'm going to share some of my own tips of what I do in my life to keep evolving. And it's not necessarily things that you have to do per se on a regular basis, but just how I maintain an equilibrium. I do a guided meditation, but I'm also going to teach you a certain type of breath work that I use in my posture and alignment training when I have clients. I used to do that quite a while ago. I'll talk about the physiological and anatomical benefits and function of it. And then that will be a tool that people can use to bring into their daily lives to calm their nervous system and to return to their inner compass, their center. So it's going to be about a 1.5 to 2 hour event, maybe a little bit longer if everyone's up for it. And I look forward to seeing you there. And Katie, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Anyone else have any final questions before I sign off? Oh, you're welcome, Riffraff. Thanks so much. I'm stoked you were able to be here. Paulo says, please visit the Philippines. You will love the people. God bless you. Yes, thank you so much, Paulo. Yes, I love Filipino people. They're very nice. They're very welcoming, very friendly. Testimonial. Oh, you're so welcome. You're welcome, Brian. The Global Vagabond says, I think governments want to keep people separate because the corporations want 2 cars, 2 Amazon Prime accounts, 2 of everything. Yes, exactly. It keeps the system going. Yeah. Accurate realist. I'll check back and hype this when the stream on my mobile device after post-processing when the live chat replay is available. Thank you so much. Darmega says, thank you. Looking forward to tomorrow evening with you. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Lester, you're most welcome. Thank you. It was such a treat to have all you here. And as nice, this is the first time I believe I've had someone from South Korea in my live streams. So thank you. And I look forward to visiting South Korea again in the next year. Fox Follows, been watching your videos here and there. They're refreshing. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And welcome. And Snail's Trip, you've been an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your journey. Absolutely. I think that's the only way forward, is all of us sharing our experiences and learning from one another. I learn a lot through my community here on YouTube, and it sounds like that's the best kind of way to be, instead of we're all teachers and we're all students. And I love that. It's a real gift. So thank you for being part of this gift. Oh yes, thank you, Robert. Yes, I'm over 19,000 subs at the moment, and it's only been 5.5 months. I am floored. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Paulo. He says I'm such a great person with a wonderful personality. Thank you. That's very sweet. I appreciate that. Good night to you, Global Vagabond. Purposeful Sound. You're most welcome. Yes, we're all forever learning. And if you're not, then you're not alive. You're just existing. All right, everyone. I hope you have a fabulous night. We have 46 people in the chat. Before I sign off, if you haven't hit the thumbs up, thank you. It'll send that out to more people in their feeds so they watch it later. It may be, I have a friend coming to visit in Vietnam very soon, so it may be, I may not be live streaming until the end of the month. She and I are going to be hopping around, sorry, the end of November. Some of you, it is the end of the month for you. It's October 31st. But by the end of November, I should be live streaming at least once or twice again. All right. In the meantime, everyone take care. If you're going to be at the transformational deep dive tomorrow, then I'll see you there. But please, I'll put the link in the description. Just bear with me. It will be it's already in the community posts, or it will be in the description box within the next 5 minutes. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.